Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info coming at you after the conclusion of the Pennzoil 400 at Las Vegas. And who would have thought, after coming into this expecting perhaps that Christopher Bell would get his fourth consecutive win and join Bill Elliott as the only drivers to win 4 of the first 5 races of the year, the first driver to win 4 straight races since Jimmy Johnson back in 2007. Who would have expected in this case, to have Josh Berry scoring the 101st win for the Wood Brothers, his first Cup Series victory in just his second full-time season, another streak of first-time winners in that Wood Brothers car over this many years, and a tremendous victory, a tremendous battle between himself and Daniel Suarez as well. Suarez having a massive turnaround after a disastrous start to this year, being involved in just about every major altercation on track here this season, but this time having a clean race out there, putting a fine showing out there. I'm sure he's disappointed finishing second. We heard as much from his interview, but the star of the show today, the late model star that Dale Jr. brought up through the ranks there in the Xfinity series, competing for wins, indeed winning Xfinity races at the Las Vegas track before, had his first year last year with Stewart Haas Racing right before the team shut down, driving Kevin Harvick's car last year. Not really having that many good runs that season. I remember at Bristol in the spring race, he was up there for a part of it there, but never really got to show what he could do with all the turmoil that was going on with that team. But now he goes over to the Wood Brothers, a team that just last year had Harrison Burton score the team's 100th win in dramatic fashion under the lights at Daytona. And my goodness, just a real surprising story. You don't usually think about the mile-and-a-half tracks being a good place for first-time winners. You usually think drivers, the Hendricks and the Penske teams seem to really have a stranglehold on this, and of course the Christopher Bell thing on top of it. But strategy working out a bit differently with all kinds of pit road miscues and late race cautions here, kind of shuffling things out. However, still having a long enough green flag run at the end to have some drama at the front of the field. And my goodness, I'm still kind of internalizing this here at the moment. If you really think back to it, and Elliott Sadler just retweeted a tweet that he posted here. Sadler being, of course, a first-time winner with the Wood Brothers back in 2001, as chronicled back in the episode of 500 Days a while back there. Him writing, holy shit, I'm in tears. Congratulations to the Wood Brothers and Josh Berry. Great guys all the way, all around. So happy. This being tweeted by Elliott Sadler just a little bit here. A massive deal. I think we've talked about this with Berry's great run that he had at Phoenix, and of course him competing for a good run at Atlanta before the last lap crash earlier this year. There does seem to be some magic for some reason with that 21 car and getting people their first wins. Getting multiple wins in a season is still, I think, the next thing on their list to check off. But going back to 01 when they were merging with Roush, and as chronicled in the broadcast here now, subsequently with Penske, keeping that team in operation. For whatever reason, they just find these situations. You had Elliott Sadler back in 2001. You had Trevor Bayne in the 2011 Daytona 500. You had Ryan Blaney after that, and Harrison Burton. And now this, really the last, 5 winners that the Wood Brothers have had have all been first-time winners, and that streak continues right here. And we're only a few races into the season now, so, who knows if things really take off from there. It's going to be interesting. He's going to be in the All-Star race in North Wilkesboro, which is going to be great for the Wood Brothers. And mentioning this earlier with the other runs that they had this year, the 75th anniversary season for the Wood Brothers couldn't possibly have started off much better than it could have here with having the strong runs out the gate, and then, of course, having this win there, too. Really, it was a tremendous effort out there in a race that really it felt like he was up there. He was one of the contenders. He certainly had a fine enough car to actually be a contender up there, but actually making a move for the lead and the win there, capitalized on it exactly at the right time, and track position ended up being really critical with the issues that were happening throughout the field. It kind of, for me at least, it kind of took me by surprise. Again, it's always a challenge covering the last place action, and this race here, of course, we'll get into that too, because that took a big portion of this event here. But to follow what's happening in the race after that's locked up there, it still seemed like he kind of came out of nowhere. I was really kind of starting to think that this was going to be Noah Gragson's day, being one of the Las Vegas natives in the field here, of him potentially getting the win. Every time I looked up and I saw that 4-car up there, it seemed like he was like 12th, and then he was 10th, and then he was 8th, and then unfortunately got in that incident on the back straightaway with Ryan Blaney, later blew a tire that put himself in the wall that caused, I believe, what was the last caution of the day. So the results didn't show for him, but perhaps we'll be talking about him on a future show here down the stretch. But just a tremendous turnaround there, and a fascinating top three, as Mike Joy was very right to point out there. If you're, we're at the Las Vegas Sportsbook and you had Josh Berry, Daniel Suarez, and Ryan Preece as your top three, I don't know if the odds would have been that good, especially with all the hype with the Christopher Bell deal here. Just a fantastic story. Down to earth, short track driver, came up really the traditional way, a bit of an older driver. In some ways, not really that old, but really, compared to some of these boy pilots like Ty Gibbs and others out there, definitely a bit of a difference there. Just finding his way up there. And Lasbro and I were at one of his wins in Vegas in the Xfinity series. I believe it was the one where he took over for Michael Lynette in the 1-car there, and just kind of cruised at the end there and was able to kind of put himself in the right position. And this team seemed to be able to do exactly that, and kept him right up there. And the Phoenix run was impressive. I didn't think he would capitalize on it this quickly. He was driver you already kind of started to kind of circle on your list and be like one to watch, but didn't think it would turn in this quickly. I'm honestly just shocked. I don't know if that's the consensus from everybody else here too, but I think that was a tremendous story. It's too bad that the broadcast kind of rushed out of this here to do this, Patrick Dempsey thing or whatever they're broadcasting afterwards. Cause it is a great story, and I imagine it's going to get some more attention through this week and into Homestead next week as well. It should. Right from the get-go, when it seemed like you're going to have a couple of drivers have a stranglehold on the wins this season, to have such a breakthrough like this, and so convincingly, margin of victory 1.358 seconds is the margin of victory there. Again, Suarez did a decent job staying right up there. I was taking much more notice of him than anybody than Barry in this case here, just because, again, Suarez has struggled so much this year, got in the wreck with Connor Zilic, got the wreck with Catherine Legg last week. I believe he wrecked in Daytona. My goodness, just seemed like every week he was having problems. Glad they actually, incidentally, made that paint scheme look a little better, brought back that blue and white scheme on the freeway insurance deal. Sometimes something as simple as the cosmetics there can really help a team out, and that seemed to be the case here this time around. Very nearly pulled off a win at a track where he's finished last in the past, so good to see him turn around there. I believe he actually had a couple. I know he finished last in the 99 car, and I think he did in the 96, or at least he was contending for it at one point. A great turnaround for him. And then Ryan Preece too. Same deal. Driver having a career run here. When Lasbro and I were watching it, he thought he was a lap down. It's like, wow, why is he, fighting so hard up there? It's like, no. He's getting up there with Chastain and those other guys and just going for it. Really was, a perfect cap off to a great weekend of racing. I think, the Xfinity race to a degree, but certainly the Truck Series race had just some phenomenal competition out there. And we'll talk about all three of those here tonight. Got a little something for show and tell here. We'll do some trivia here later on the show. A fantastic run for Barry. Nothing better than a first-time winner, and to have it with the Wood brothers and their 75th anniversary season, at a race where they were not at all expected to really do, they weren't expected to be having a poor finish out there. Of course, they had a great qualifying run, but like they were saying in the broadcast there, having 40 to 1 odds out there, it was not one of the ones to expect, and that's what makes this sport so special. You still got to run the race, and things may not play out exactly how you expect. So just tremendous for them. So happy for the Wood family out there, and the program, and John Wood and the rest of them out there. This is a great way to start the year, so we'll see how things shake out. Daniel Suarez in second, Ryan Preece in third, William Byron in the fourth spot there, one of the only other race winners from this year, finishing in the fourth spot. Looked like he had one of the best cars out there, couldn't quite pull it off. Ross Chastain in fifth, was really mixing it up with the leaders there, dropped back a little bit. Austin Cindric had his time up front there, led 47 laps, looked very good in this race here. Probably one of the best runs he's had since Atlanta. Alex Bowman had some issues, was one of the many drivers that got caught up with issues on pit road there that dropped him a bit further back in the order here. AJ Allmendinger, great top 10 effort for him. This is a track where I think he won in the Xfinity Series, didn't he, Allmendinger, before? I keep forgetting if it's this race or if it was at Kansas, but I know he's had some good runs at the 1.5 tracks there to kind of turn things around. But regardless, an 8th place run for him, a fine showing out there. Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott rounding out your top 10. Just great competition. A lot of different leaders. Looking at the lap counts here, Larson leading 61 laps. Josh Berry just leading 18 after Suarez led 12. Just a good distribution throughout. Christopher Bell does fall short of the 4th straight victory here today. He ends up back in the 12th spot, but had no shortage of stuff to be coming back from. Not only the tail end penalty for the throttle linkage issue this morning that sacrificed his qualifying run from yesterday, but regardless, working his way through the pack, getting into the top 10, coming down pit road, a loose left front wheel, and a heads-up move by the team. I mean, I don't know if we've seen this elsewhere before, but a great job of actually calling him into the next stall up. Chase Briscoe had already lost multiple laps from a loose wheel, so his stall was open, and in that moment, he was able to swerve back in there, get that lug nut tightened, and send him back out there, and that absolutely saved his day. He didn't end up pulling off the win. He wasn't really contending for the lead really any today. But again, this is why I love this full season championship so much, because a moment like that would get magnified so many times over if it's a matter of, winning the championship or not, or finishing top 10 in points or not. Those are the kind of moments that really make things interesting. Yes, he had to drop to the tail end of the field, and it seemed like he was pretty much mired in there until really pretty much the end there when he got up into the top 10. But again, a fine showing for him. I think that team is still going to be tremendously dangerous the rest of this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back to Homestead next week and he's up there battling Kyle Larson or Denny Hamlin for the lead in that one. It could very well be the case. I really thought for sure he was going to get that 4th straight win because, again, coming into this race last fall, Bell was up there. He got the win taken away from him when Joey Logano had a different strategy and he just couldn't catch him. And you just knew that he had this race circled on his calendar. Maybe it was too much focus on it. Who knows? But regardless, things work out a bit different for him and back in 12th. In the 14th spot, Justin Haley with one of the best highlight reel moments of this race. Wreck unfolds on the back straightaway. You got Ryan Blaney and Eric Jones spinning down to the apron. He somehow shoots the gap and gets right through there in just an instant. And I'm glad that was caught on the Fox broadcast because the onboard camera from the Max deal was fantastic as well. These two cars colliding right after he passed through. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do a range of stunt like that in this case. So a tremendous effort for him there too. Another great run for Spire Motorsports in general. Michael McDowell winning the first pole for Spire Motorsports in this race and ends up finishing back into the 16th spot there. Bouncing back, 5 laps led for him. Didn't really see him up front as much. He kind of dropped a lot of spots there, was around mid-pack there in the opening stages, but glad he could round things off there at the end. Chase Briscoe, mentioning him, losing those multiple laps, had a loose left rear wheel that forced him back to pit road. He lost 4 laps in total, was already 2 laps down, got the 2-lap penalty on top of it. Not only did he get back on the lead lap, but finished in the 17th spot, so a fantastic recovery for him. John Hunter Nemechek in the Backstreet Boys car, 42 team back in the 20th spot. Again, maybe not the best run out there, but still, I would still point at this being a sign of continued improvement for the Legacy Motor Club. That with Eric Jones' top 5 starting spot for him and the 42 team being in the upper half of the field there. I think that's tremendous for them, and hopefully that's something they could pick up on. And Homestead definitely has a lot of significance to the Nemechek family, both for what happened to his uncle and also his father's success there in the Xfinity series in particular, plus it being more of a home race. Don't overlook that 42 car, because remember also John Hunter himself, when he got in that 45, when Bubba Wallace was suspended after the Las Vegas deal, he qualified that car very fast. So maybe this time around in Toyota, with the program developing a bit better, things could turn around there as well. Looking a bit further back, Ty Gibbs in 22nd. That's ironically probably the best run he's had in about 6 months. The statistic that was posted back at Phoenix last week showing the several struggling runs, including the first part of this race, where he was just in the bottom 5 and really struggling with pace. Whether it was the attrition or whatever else, they finally managed to kind of get him up there. 22nd is definitely not what that team is capable of running. They're capable of running much better than that. But however, at least it's some positive momentum here going into these next couple of races here as well. So we'll find out if that's a deal. Tyler Reddick, kind of disappointed to see him back in the 24th spot. This was a driver that tracked down Kyle Larson in all the stages in the spring race last year and was up there at one point or another. But the pit strategy at the end seemed to really kind of, the gamble just didn't pay off. And with all the Vegas puns that roll through this weekend, that's definitely appropriate to capturing what happened with the number 45 team. He ends up back in 24th. Denny Hamlin in 25th after overcoming his pit penalty at the beginning of the race. Looked like he was in contention to maybe try some strategy. But again, that caution with Noah Gragson really shuffled the order there at the end. And we had a very unusual finish to this, but some very deserving winners here at the same time. Looking further back, Bubba Wallace was up front for 20 laps. He got involved in the Ryan Blaney incident on the back straightaway. May have got some damage in that. Dropped him a bit further back, 1 lap down to the 28th spot. And then we get further back into the actual last place battle here at the same time. In the opening laps, it looked like it was going to be Cody Ware in the initial laps. Well, it did turn out to be Cody Ware at the end. But the first part, it looked like it was going to be Cody Ware more or less on pace. I don't exactly know what was happening with the 51. I didn't hear as much of the radio transmission during the key moments of this actual race here. But Cody dropped to the last spot there in the first part of the race, was the first driver to be lapped. Then on an ensuing restart, something just happened. The car just didn't get through the gears, and he was about 6 or 7 seconds back of the field. Looked like that was going to more or less be the story of the race. Things really started changing once you had Chase Briscoe's penalty that dropped him 4 laps down. Then Ware was actually able to stay on the lead lap and at least try to kind of figure out whatever gremlins were going on with that Evel Knievel car. For that moment, at least, he was able to kind of climb through the rankings. Next driver that had problems, the loose right rear wheel on Kyle Busch's car after a round of pit stops. Had a tank slapper into the backstretch wall. Lost the brakes. Still was able to get into the Neon garage there at that point. Crew spent more than 20 laps to kind of get that car going again. Got back out there, cleared the minimum speed as well. But then moments later, Cody Ware blows a tire, hits the outside wall in turns 3 and 4. Very hard hit. Good to see him get back out of the car there. Sounded like it was just a flat tire, car switched ends, and you're just a passenger at that point there. 51 car gets towed to the garage area, and then on lap 222, Kyle Busch gets past Cody, so the 51 car gets last place finish. And because Cody had just recently come back to the Cup Series last year, it's actually Cody Ware's first last place finish in 125 starts dating back to 2021 at the Indianapolis Grand Prix circuit. So that'll be among the features in the article for tonight, again, pending the results of post-race inspection, which we'll cover that a bit later tonight. The articles for the Xfinity and the Truck Series races are already on the website. So the first last place run for the number 51 and the first for Cody Ware, I believe, for the driver as well here at Las Vegas for this weekend. So an unfortunate ending for his day there. Ryan Blaney involved in the incident on the back straightaway there. Just a bit of a misjudgment there with cars coming off of turn 2. Blaney ends up your 35th place finisher. Shane Van Gisbergen had a absolutely miserable, frustrating day, similar to what Kyle Busch was dealing with. Multiple flat tires, starting with the spin down the back straightaway. Ultimately dropped out of the race there, finishing in the 34th spot. Kyle got past him into 33rd, but couldn't catch Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon came out from the Blaney wreck, managed to clear the clock himself. They were about 8 laps apart there to the stretch, and Dillon was not quite able to catch the wreck to Noah Gragson at the end. Gragson back in the 31st spot. Understood that Carson Hocevar also had some problems. It was great to see him work his way into the top 10 initially after he didn't have a great qualifying run. Really expected him to be in contention. Memory serves that he drove for Legacy Motor Club a couple years ago. Unfortunately got a wreck that dropped him to last place. But in this case here, with his Spire teammates running as well as they did, it looked like he was going to take his place up there and run about as well as the whole team had, like at Michigan last year. Unfortunately, in this case, got run into by Ty Gibbs on pit road, and that really sabotaged his day. You could see in the closing laps, he was dropping off the pace and kind of getting freight trained by the rest of the field there. But again, I think overall, especially with this car, and again, nothing's perfect and everything, but I thought they put on a fine show out there. It was good to see a long enough green flag run that people could actually compete for position, that we didn't need a game of red light, green light, and multiple restarts and so forth. The Vegas track is, again, one of my most favorites to actual visit. Not just the one Sears Point, of course, being the home track, but Vegas is one that I always highly recommend. It's a very accessible track. It's very easy to get from the infield to the outfield. It's very easy to try to find different sight lines around there. Media center is beautiful. The garage area is very inviting. It has plenty of shade. Food there is good. And of course, it's Las Vegas. I mean, that's not really my thing. I usually just stay in North Vegas for the weekend whenever we cover that race. We almost added this race to this weekend. Kind of regret not doing that, assuming everything would have stayed the same and Barry would win the race there. But this is one I'd love to cover again. If not this fall, maybe next spring. We'll find out if that'll be the deal there. I think we've covered 2 race weekends there so far. I don't think we've done the spring race. I think we've just done the fall for the playoffs. So we'll see if that's something else we do down the road. But yeah, really enjoyed it. No complaints here, at least in terms of the drive. I still think the Fox broadcast was holding it back a bit. I was really noticing how dim the color palette was. I know that, there's been serious sandstorms and everything over the Midwest. And of course, thoughts go out to everybody that's been dealing with that over in Texas and so forth. But the broadcast here was kind of looking like there was that same kind of gloom over the cars. The color schemes were just really kind of pale, and the broadcast itself was okay. Mike Joy was kind of spearheading, talking more about Josh Berry at the end because, there's almost 20 laps. He basically got up front and was pulling away and looked like he was going to be in position to win. But again, still a little bit disjointed there in the booth. Again, it really, the chemistry just isn't there. And it's unfortunate because this is like a really big moment and it just didn't feel that big from their viewpoint, all the way to Jamie Little's interview on the front stretch there. I don't know if they had to do a quick off for the this documentary or whatever. But it would have been nice to lean into that a bit more. I mean, it seems silly to argue about that because at the end of the day, Josh Berry pulls off the win. The Wood brothers are happy. Everybody's happy with it. That should be enough. But again, I think that it is something to be said about making these things as big as they should be. When Elliott Sadler won, thinking back to all those other wins that the Wood brothers had, even Harrison Burton's, which of course Lee Diffie nailed the call on at the very end. Those were fantastic moments there too. Again, Josh Berry deserves just that much celebration there too. And again, it's something that there is just some magic. That's why I had that be the caption for the race today. Trying not to spoil the race here for people who haven't seen it or just seen this thumbnail pop up on their list there, because I really try to be careful with that. But that's really kind of the story, I think, with this one here, is it's just a fantastic weekend for him. Really, really made that an interesting story there for Barry. So congratulations to Josh and to the team out there. And again, very interested to see where they go from here. We got so much of the season left, and they just started to kind of gel here after Harrison Burton running the car for the last few years, and Harrison getting that win in Daytona. It's really exciting to see. I think somebody else was mentioning here, I believe it was in the chat as well, talking about the effort here that it was the first time that the Wood brothers have won in 1.5 miles since the Morgan Shepherd win in '93. I think that is the case if you really think about it. Yeah, I mean, it was Pocono for Ryan Blaney, it was Daytona for Harrison Burton, kind of doing this out of order. Harrison Burton for Daytona. Ryan Blaney was at Pocono. Then you had Trevor Bayne at the Daytona 500. Yeah, and then Bristol for Elliott Sadler. So, 1.5 mile track. So that really does put it in perspective. These are the kind of statistics that really do need to be brought up a lot more. I wonder if maybe their stat guy was kind of blindsided by this, and they have like a Wood Brothers stat pile, and it's like, oh, let's bring these out here too. Yeah, I mean, again, just a wonderful, wonderful start to it. It's as if it would have been great last year if the Petty team, if the Legacy team rather, was able to pull off a win last year, the Petty team's 75th anniversary. There was a lot of great celebrations that happened off track, I'm sure, but, this year, I'm sure there's been some great celebrations already in Stewart, Virginia, and so forth, and I'm sure that's going to be continuing going forward. So, fantastic deal here at the same time. Yeah, I know. I need to bring a Wood Brothers hat out. I didn't want to delay the show much further than I had. It was already kind of a longer getting set up here. In the past, I had the Harrison Burton hat back on that pyramid thing here over my the bill of my hat here. I took that off here recently. I need to bring that back out. I brought that out when Harrison won Daytona last year, so that was another one at the same time. So, again, just a phenomenal deal there, and I don't really have many more notes on that. I do have a lot more I want to talk about here from the Xfinity and the Truck Series, as well as some other thoughts on this. I want to kind of jump into those here at the same time. And, of course, if you guys have any other questions that you'd like me to cover, I can cover that at the same time. Let me get my notes right here. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of checking this out here, too. I'm glad I wrote this down because I admit I feel a little scrambled after this one because I was not expecting this at all, for sure. I figured Barry would probably compete for a win sometime this year. I was kind of thinking probably the short tracks because, again, his late model background, maybe he pulls something out at the Wilkesboro deal there for the All-Star race or something, and he could still well do that. That may be the case. But yeah, as they mentioned, I mean, it was so obvious in hindsight. Yeah, his wins in the Xfinity Series should have made him at least somebody to consider watching this weekend. Maybe not a favorite, but definitely one where you wouldn't say he doesn't have a chance at all. Yeah, fantastic. This is what makes the sport great, and that's what makes this so thrilling here at the same time. We'll kind of hop around here a little bit. We'll go into the Xfinity Series race as well, and the big star from that one. Oh my goodness, we have to talk about this. So Kyle Busch may have had just a disastrous day today on the Cup Series side and finished laps down and so forth. But I think one thing that probably a lot of fans can take from this weekend is whenever Kyle Busch's career does end, and I don't think that's going to be anytime soon, as much as, I think that's going to depend on Brexton's career, which is developing very quickly in the short tracks and so forth, and what he's doing. Whenever Kyle Busch does get out of the race car, he's going to be phenomenal in the booth. I think that his performance in Saturday's Xfinity Series race was perfect. I think he did a tremendous, tremendous job. And I hate it for everybody that's still having problems watching the races on the CW. Jeff Gluck and others have been doing a great job speaking out about that. And everybody should. I think it is. It's outrageous because the CW's broadcasts have been really, really good this year. And I just know that there's a big portion of it. I'm sure even a portion of people watching on this show here as well, that haven't been able to watch any of the Xfinity races. And that's inexcusable, especially today, and especially when the CW has an app here as well. Incidentally, Bumblebee48, thank you for mentioning as well. Yeah, when Michael Waltrip won the All-Star race, that was a 1.5 mile track. So very good point. Yeah, for a non-points race, they won in a 1.5 mile there. But again, almost 10 years ago at this point too. But very right to point that out at the same time. But going back to Kyle Busch, I thought that, what he did in the booth there, was really good. And I'm far from the only one saying it. He was getting a lot of rave reviews, and deservedly so. Going into this year, when they announced that they were going to have Parker Kligerman and Jamie McMurray in the booth, I think I mentioned on this show that I kind of expected McMurray to be kind of the quieter of the two and be kind of the less excitable, more analytical one, and Parker Kligerman to be kind of the more excitable one. What was very interesting to me is, I don't know how much, I did say at Daytona that I had a little bit of a concern that Kligerman and McMurray sounded too similar, but they played off each other so well, I didn't mind it. It didn't sound cacophonous or anything. And really, I felt in the races since then that the two of them could have just done the broadcast themselves, didn't need Adam Alexander there at all. I think they could have just handled that entirely fine themselves. I doubt they would probably think that, but that's the way it felt watching it for sure. What was interesting to me with Kyle Busch coming in there is that he really kind of filled that role that I thought McMurray was going to. And it really revealed to me how excitable McMurray is. Because what was great is like when something exciting was happening, McMurray was responding to it very much. And I think that's always the fun part is, I kind of picture McMurray and Kligerman kind of elbowing each other on the couch and just pointing out like, how, if they were fans at home and just being excited about what's happening in the race, and again, I know I've been outspoken about what's been an issue with the broadcast, especially when they're goofing around and laughing and stuff like that. This is very different. I have, if you can be, it should be fun. You should be having fun describing what's happening in the race, paying attention to it, having it be responsive to what's happening. The problem I have is when it's just a laugh track and they're goofing around and they're just kind of letting stuff slip by, kind of like what happened in the Truck Series race, which is unfortunate. We'll get into that there as well. But in the Xfinity Series broadcast, I thought Kyle Busch and his dynamic with McMurray was really, really good because Busch did have more that analytical view. I thought that his insights were really good and certainly his accomplishments. I mean, even in the race today, when the wheels were literally falling off that car, he was still giving great insight as to what they could adjust on that car, and the team was giving it back to him, and they were having that back and forth. And I'm so glad he brought that into the booth. And the other thing I like too is I like that little bit of sarcasm at the same time, which is desperately needed in there. Just a little bit of it. Like, it doesn't have to be, where, it's Kevin Harvick and Clint Boyer. I think that's showing that too much of that sarcasm or that kind of cynical angle of it there can kind of start devouring itself. And that's something I've not been too crazy about. But Kyle Busch, he was very friendly. He was enjoying himself. And it's tremendous to think that given Kyle's own history where, he's had so many periods in his career, being kind of the outlaw, kind of being the, aggressive, kind of no nonsense, kind of snarky driver in some cases. His brother, of course, went through the same period in his career too. But again, I thought he was great. I thought the way he played off McMurray was, I would say, even better. I wouldn't say a massive improvement from Kligerman to McMurray, because I still think Kligerman does a great job, and I still think he deserves to be up there. And obviously, the only reason he wasn't in there for this was because he was at Sebring. But man, I really loved how they clicked off each other, and they had different enough voices there from McMurray's own voice versus Kyle Busch. I could really recognize them as separate people, and separate people with separate views. And that was the thing that surprised me, because again, when I listened to McMurray and Kligerman, I kind of assumed that Kligerman was the one that was doing kind of the Benny Parsons thing and reacting like, oh, look at this. And yes, he did do that. But McMurray does that a lot too. And that was kind of interesting to me. So that was a good eye opener. And maybe that's something else that could be worked at. And I think, Kyle Busch and McMurray could have handled that Xfinity broadcast perfectly fine themselves. I found Adam Alexander, there were a lot of times that Adam either had to interrupt one of them to say something, or he was more or less repeating what one or the other were saying. And it really wasn't adding much more to it. As I said on social media, and I think this would have helped out Alexander in this case here, is if he just had a more minimal approach and he was just kind of reminding us what was happening. Like, step away from doing the reaction video stuff, kind of let Kyle Busch and McMurray do that, but instead just focus on what is actually happening, the radio broadcast approach. Tell me, who's battling who, what's this battle for position that we're seeing? Who's racing in front of whose camera are we seeing, and things like that. You could add some flourishes, you could add some statistical information and things like that. That's totally fine. But that would have been nice, because we don't need 3 people doing the same thing. 2 is fine. But you got to have, again, I always mention it every week, the firm hand on the wheel. You got to have somebody that's doing that, like Mike Joy was doing today, and really trying to guide the conversation on Josh Berry, which was very good. It just wasn't firing on all cylinders there. But yeah, I thought the Xfinity one was really good, even in a race where Justin Allgaier clearly had the best car and was kind of cruising at the end. Eric Almirola, trying to compete with him and trying to kind of take advantage and pull off another win there at the end. But regardless, I think that they made it very engaging, and I found it to be a very enjoyable broadcast. But yeah, one moment, I know I'm the sarcasm I kind of mentioned, the thing I really noticed in it was there was one point where I think it was Sammy Smith had a loose wheel on pit road, and nobody knew where this tire would come from. There's still like 2 or 3 different pit stalls where they had a loose wheel, and then Adam Alexander just kind of moved on and didn't address it. And Kyle Busch thankfully stepped in there. It's like, well, okay, well, who was it? Like, I mean, do we know where was it there? And I like that he brought that up. It's like, come on, like, there's so many things that just kind of let slip by, and that's so unfortunate because there's so many things that happen in a broadcast. I mean, and every little thing can have a factor in, and how this race finishes. I mean, in the Cup race today, we saw the leaders like tear through some garbage bag that was on the middle of the track there, and turns 3 and 4. The first time Christopher Bell was slowing down and going into Briscoe's stall for the Titan lug nut. They more or less didn't really say much about it, then had to revisit it later on. Just a little bit more active. I think that's the kind of stuff that really helps there. Now, the last place battle in the Xfinity race was very short. William Sawalich had some contact from Jeb Burton coming off of turn 2, slapped the outside wall, knocked the rear deck lid off that car, and came to pit road, and their day was done. And it was the first time that Sawalich has finished in last place, the first time the 18 has finished in last in an Xfinity race since 2007, with Eric Almirola, interestingly. And the first time a driver had finished last in an Xfinity race without completing a lap since Akinori Ogata in the Daytona Xfinity race last summer. So, something that seems like it's really infrequent that would happen, but regardless, that was what happened here. What was interesting is, as mentioned in the broadcast there, that the attrition was very low from that point on. You had many drivers that had electrical issues. We talk about the mechanical issues that are so common in Xfinity, and I really like the feature that came up in the Cup Series broadcast today where they talked about the power steering issue, because we have heard that. We've heard, especially on the Cup Series side, issues with the steering rack having to get replaced and so forth, but the fact that that system drains on the actual amount of horsepower, and so, of course, they can't change the part, so what do? I mean, they're going to change how much fluid's in there. They're maybe going to, change something else there that's going to make it on the fringe of actually failing, and then sometimes it just fails, and then these drivers find themselves in difficult situations. How many times have we heard where a driver runs out of power steering fluid and is fighting these cars around the track, even at a road course like COTA? It makes it practically impossible to get those cars around there. Michael McDowell having to deal with that not too long ago. So, again, kind of an interesting situation, but even then, very limited attrition there. Only 2 other cars in the garage area. Austin Green and Mason Massey dropping back. I don't know what's going on with Austin Green here. We really didn't see him be a factor at COTA, and then here in this race had all kinds of electrical gremlins. I know he doesn't do that many oval starts, given that he's still kind of focusing on the road course portion of it, and it's just kind of starting to branch out into what his father and uncle and have competed in. This, of course, the same Green family of David, Jeff, and Mark Green. But again, I think it's just he had so much success last year and getting those great runs, the top 5 out there at Sears Point. Maybe this is just kind of what happens. You kind of have some bad luck along the way, and you got to dig back out of it. So hopefully that'll be something that'll be helpful for him coming up too. And we'll find out what more of the schedule he's going to run. I'm kind of interested to see the 32 team run as many races as they have, even if it's just been a couple so far. I kind of expected them to maybe do all the road courses, maybe 1 or 2 ovals. It already seems like things are kind of trending a different direction there, so that'll be an interesting one to certainly look at. Looking at the rest of the bottom 5, Greg Van Alst and Ryan Ellis bringing out the bottom 5. Both of them having issues, losing power at one point or another. Ellis going to the garage area at one point, but still coming out there and finishing the race. It was like 19 laps down there at the finish. The other big story, once again, if you want to talk about determination, yes, Justin Allgaier is phenomenal at these 1.5 mile tracks and just keeps racking them up. Scores another win here in this one. But Ryan Sieg and the RSS Racing Team and his brother Kyle Sieg in this race really turned things around once again. You think about the issues that Ryan had at Phoenix last week, where they went to a backup car, running over just a hump in the garage area, destroying a car, and not being able to come out there and compete again with that one, having to take the backup and scramble to get that thing out there, and had a good run. This one here had an issue with the shifter, dropped back, like just the parachute deployed, kind of like what happened with Cody Ware in the Cup Series race today. Dropped him all the way to the back of the field. They get the issue fixed somehow, and he claws his way back up there to a 7th place finish, a massive run. I can't imagine how many cars he must have passed in this race. But I thought that was an absolutely phenomenal run he had. And meanwhile, his brother Kyle is up there leading 6 green flag laps in the 28 car. Had some different strategy at the end, led him in the closing stages of the race, in fact. Looked like maybe he was going to be on the right strategy to kind of shake things out. But unfortunately, just didn't quite shake out for him here in this case. But still ends up with an 11th place finish. Not a career best. He's had some top 10 runs, but a phenomenal run that he's had there too. So I think that'll be another one to look at the same time. So great effort for him. Harrison Burton got a lot of attention there in the Xfinity Series broadcast, deservedly so. The AM Racing team seems like they're right back on the trend that they had with Brett Moffitt a couple of years ago, getting top 10 runs with Harrison and having some good performances. Harrison, of course, was so good in that Joe Gibbs car before this late season switch to the Wood Brothers. You guessed it, in the Cup Series. It's good to see that trend continuing. Brandon Jones finally having a good run too. He's another driver that's been very much like Daniel Suarez on the Cup side, really struggling with a lot of issues, getting in wrecks and so forth, but finding a good way to get up there too. Some great storylines throughout the Xfinity Series field there too. But regardless, William Sawalich ends up being your last place finisher. Again, kind of clean and green towards the end there. Margin of victory over a second. The final 102 laps under the green flag there. But regardless, again, I thought it was a very smooth race and a very quality broadcast there at the same time. I think they did a great job up there. And, again, hopefully that's going to be something that we're going to be seeing much more of down the stretch here, too. Let's see here. I want to also, let's go get the Truck Series. I'll probably save some of these other notes for a little bit later here. We'll kind of go through the races one at a time here. The Truck Series race on Friday night. And I know there was a lot of problems with rain, of course, in this race, and that's always a drag. We had delays that were between an hour or so that pushed this well past 9 o'clock Pacific before the race was actually over with. But I think I'm so glad we actually got the rest of that race in, because what racing we saw was really competitive. Those trucks are on the absolute verge of spinning out at that track out there. They put on a really good show out there. I think that they were very competitive. Stuart Friesen really looked like he was going to have a shot at it. Corey Heim is just easily the best driver in the Truck Series right now, and of course deserved to pull off the victory there. But you had so many other guys that were up there. Lane Riggs and Chandler Smith, the 2 front row trucks, were up there contending for it. Tanner Gray looked very good. Grant Enfinger was really kind of pressuring Heim at the end. We saw some phenomenal moves on the back straightaway. Again, I think, in the past, we've talked about this before too. The Vegas track is almost like a super speedway to those trucks, whatever the deal is with their aerodynamics and horsepower combination or anything. But they just put on a great show out there. And this was another great example of it. In a race which also, like the Xfinity race, had very, very low attrition. Poor Stephen Malozzi coming back out in the Truck Series, made his first start of the year this year for the Josh Realm effort, the number 2 truck. They had electrical and drivetrain issues from the very beginning all day that day, on Friday. Still was able to qualify for the race. At least they were able to start the race. Of course, one other driver, Justin S. Carroll, actually missed the show because their backup hauler got stuck in the snow in Arizona. Again, crazy weather through this past week here again. So that was kind of the situation there that cut the field down to 31 trucks. Malozzi ends up with his last place finish on this end there. I appreciate him being upbeat there about that, regardless under the circumstances. I'm sure it was a frustrating situation. We were messaging back and forth a little bit there during the red flag there. But hopefully things turn around there for that program, because, of course, they got a lot to look forward to, with Frankie Muniz completing the rest of his rookie season there in the 33 truck and so forth there. Again, kind of an interesting race the way it played out. Caden Honeycutt looked like he was in position again to really get his first win. Didn't quite happen out there. Got shaken back to the 12th spot at the finish. Tyler Ankrum also on the comeback trail. He was on the outside pole at the start. Looked very good. Still finished in the 10th spot after leading 39 laps. Again, I think there's a lot of good storylines you can build from this coming up to the next few races there too. So again, I think the race itself was very good. Once again, the broadcast was kind of I liked that Brad Keselowski was in there. I felt that he was the best part of the booth that they were working with. I'm not a big fan of Joey Logano up there because he kind of leans too easily into just, kind of laughing and just being silly and coming up with weird nicknames for things as okie dokie and all that other stuff. I've not really been a big fan of that. And again, Jamie Little, it's just not working, which is unfortunate, given how excellent she's been on pit road. I thought Keselowski did a solid enough job and try to keep things kind of focused on that. And of course, his family goes very far back with the Truck Series and his father and so forth. Despite kind of the shortcomings of the broadcast there, I thought, the race turned out to be a really good one for those that stayed up later. Obviously, with it being on the East Coast, I imagine that was much more of a challenge there with it ending so late on Friday. Congratulations to Corey Heim on another impressive victory, and Steve Malazzi being your last place finisher for the Truck Series there. Second straight last place run for the number 2, which up to this point, coming into the season, I believe it only finished once with Dave Ashley back in 1995. So kind of interesting to see that turnaround there. Of course, the team just acquiring that number this year after the Rev Racing team shut down with Nick Sanchez from last season. So kind of interesting to see how that'll change the complexion of some of these statistics going forward here at the same time. Tanner Gray, another great run for him in the 3rd spot there. Good to see Ty Majeski up there in the top 5 as well. Raja Caruth, last year's Vegas winner, finishing in the 7th spot. Matt Crafton came back from some issues as well to finish in the top 10. As one of my staff writers wrote, Ben Schneider was writing about there. Good to bring up the fact that Crafton has had such a remarkable streak of starts in his career going back to the year 2000, which is pretty incredible. If you think about it, that goes past the stretch of all 5 of the most recent Cup Series wins the Wood brothers have had. So that kind of puts that in perspective there too. Let's see. But it's going to be kind of an interesting deal there too. Death Killer, friends with the NASCAR driver. There's a few drivers I do talk with. I don't want to put all that out there here at the same time, but yeah, very much Steve Malazzi has always been really cool. We've always had some, we haven't had the chance to meet face to face yet. We're kind of working that out. We'll see what the rest of his schedule looks like coming up here at the same time. That'll be kind of another one to follow coming up here too. Very much enjoyed picking up one of his shirts and wearing it over at the Outback Steakhouse here in the area too, and he appreciated that, so that was a lot of fun at the same time. Let's see. I actually did watch the Formula One race in Albert Park there last night. I wasn't counting on doing it, but I heard there was going to be rain in the area, and it's a season opener. It seemed like that was going to be crazy, and it certainly didn't disappoint. I was seeing some mentions of it already here in the chat there about that poor driver that crashed on the formation lap there. So that was a rough deal for those guys. But that was pretty cool to see with Lewis Hamilton's father consoling that driver and stuff. I mean, you can only imagine, the stakes. It's frustrating in any motorsport when somebody finishes last. But then if you have a situation like that where you don't even get to start the race and you got multi-million, billion-dollar entries or however much it costs to build those cars out there. And on a weekend, really, where his teammate had done so well. Yuki Tsunoda was right up there in the other Cash App car and competing so well in that. It's unfortunate to have that go by. But, again, everybody's rooting for these drivers to do the best they can. And obviously, this was a very difficult start there for a lot of those rookies in that field. I thought it was a pretty compelling race. It played out closer to a NASCAR road race. Kind of reminded me of when they had the rain at Mid-Ohio that one time. You got people having to wheel off the track and stuff and losing control and so forth. And I don't watch a lot of Formula One. I don't watch a lot of open wheel stuff in general, really. But here and there, I know of it. I know some of the, the names and the teams involved there. And I actually picked up one of the Lego sets there for the Kick Sauber team. That was... I think it's interesting to watch, and I thought this was a really compelling race with the strategy in there, and a bit of the dramatic moments there with the car that that ran off course. Both McLarens run through the grass, and one gets stuck, and he's got to back out to avoid a caution. I mean, there's some great drama in there. That was fun to see. I'm not sure how much a purist of the sport would feel about it. They probably prefer races where it's clean and green the entire way through. But I was entertained. Lastbro was as well when we were watching it last night there. So yeah, good show there too. Wasn't really planning on going into Formula One too much here on a NASCAR show, but definitely does need to be mentioned here at the same time. Let's see. That's about all I have on the big three races. I do have plenty of other notes here that I want to kind of go into here too. So we'll kind of transition into this. We'll get into trivia and so forth here in a little bit. There was a rule adjustment that came into the Cup Series earlier this week, and that was, of course, resulting in the open exemption. I like that they made this one small change there where if the open exemption was going to be a factor in the race, that there's going to be 41 starters, that it's not going to take away a spot from another driver in the field. And I think that was a cool idea. So that, yeah, I mean, I guess if you have another one of these drivers that gets the exemption, he qualifies for the race. Maybe that would be a situation where one of those open teams would still be able to start the event. They wouldn't be bumped out of the show. At least that's the way I read it. Hopefully that we'll see if that works out in practice, whenever that's going to be. I don't know if that's going to come up at Homestead or anything, but I think that's another thing that's going to be really interesting to see. And also, Jeff Gluck was very right to point out that there were some races that were not going to be eligible for this provisional, that couldn't have 41 cars. Now, of course, we have other issues where you have races where we don't even get to 40 cars, never mind 41 on the entry list. But I thought that was interesting that they had those other conditions there. But again, I think that's a good direction to be going in. Now, this news came out about the exact same time as the same debate that we had about Catherine Legg. And I'm surprised that this has still been going on since last week. There seemed to be a lot of intensifying about this from the media side. You've had some drivers come out and speak out about it, including Shane Van Gisbergen, bringing up how he had to show that he can drive a Cup car on the Charlotte Roval before he got approval to run the Chicago Street Course. And this continuing argument about if a driver is qualified enough to start a Cup race. And, this has been a problem all year. It started with the Mike Wallace deal. It's continued through the Catherine Legg thing. And it's just unfortunate. I feel terrible for all the drivers getting caught up in this, because I think it's really being made too much of, I think, honestly. I think that the elephant in the room that isn't there, that would have taken care of this, is if we had more than 4 open teams every week. If that was a situation, and say, Catherine Legg or somebody else, I don't want to pick on any one driver here, anybody, Elio Castroneves or somebody like that, wanted to compete in this show, and maybe the open exemption wasn't for them, or somebody else claimed it, or whatever. If you had a situation where you had more than 36 cars, or more than 40 cars specifically, every single week, then you really wouldn't have this story. That's what this is bred about. That's what brought all this about here, is that we have all these races where basically if you get a Cup Series ride, you're guaranteed to start the race. And the other problem is with NASCAR creating a situation where you have so little practice that we haven't fully adjusted that back to something closer to pre-COVID levels here. You have a situation where people are set up to fail. I mean, Suarez said as much, and I think that was an accurate way to do it. You have drivers that have the skills where, okay, maybe if they had to really step up and beat some other drivers in qualifying, and then had some additional practice before and after qualifying to actually adjust themselves and be able to compete in these cars, maybe they would be much better performing in the race. And that's what's happened in the sport for many years. We've had drivers that came into the Cup Series, maybe with limited experience in Xfinity or trucks or anything like that, or another circuit, but they had to prove themselves. They had to actually qualify for a race. L.W. Wright had to qualify for the race that he was in, and everybody talks about that endlessly, and justifiably so, because it made it for a compelling mystery. And Rick Houston and the folks at the Scene Vault podcast have done a lot to discuss that as well. But again, it's about going through the same hoops that everybody else has to. And I think if you have other drivers from other disciplines that want to compete in the Cup Series, they shouldn't be disincentivized from doing so. Do we really need to create all these other layers to jump through? Do we have to create all these other elements that drivers have to jump through to even start these races? We have a driver approval process. Maybe it is a bit nebulous, but again, it's probably that way because no two drivers are alike. And Brett Bodine, I understand, is again part of that development. I've heard about that from back at Sears Point a couple of years ago. Yeah, there's things they got to figure out before they're going to have them go out there and compete in the Cup Series. If you have more rules, if you have like a stricter level, if there's like a super license you have to get or something, I'm not sure if that's the direction we need to go, because NASCAR is still facing, they're still on this crossroad, and they haven't fully decided which direction they want to go yet. And perhaps this lawsuit with the charters is going to be another piece of that puzzle. On the one side, I'm sure they would rather just not have open entries at all. And that would be the easiest solution. Then they just have just the 36 chartered entries. And if you're going to drive for a chartered car, there's certain requirements about where you're going to finish in the points and, what sponsorship you get and so forth and all that. And they may just go that direction and just lock in this stagnation we've had in the field, where you have a lot of different drivers out there that are just, having to get knocked out of their ride, or teams that have to close and sell their charter to somebody else. And it just becomes kind of a lot of infighting between those teams. And then on the other side of it, you create an environment where you have 4 or more open teams every week, and you have a larger field that actually is able to compete with each other. And that if a driver isn't ready, well, they're probably not going to qualify for the race anyway, if they do qualify for the race, then, that should be something that, they should have practice to be allowed to hone their skills and get better and be able to compete in the race. And not everybody that makes, and we also need to be realistic about our expectations here. Do we really expect that anybody that makes their first Cup Series start is going to immediately be capable of finishing 20th or better or winning a race? I don't think so. Now, yeah, you don't want a situation where the person's going to be losing multiple laps, or they're becoming a hazard out there, and, people are running, they're not paying attention to the driver's meeting or something like that. But there's other steps to take care of that. I don't get this fury over inexperience. The best way in the past for a driver to get used to a Cup Series car is to run Cup Series races. And I still think this is another element that's been left unresolved from the bushwhacker phenomenon. And I'd still encourage people to check out my proposal on that I posted last year, that you need to really make use of these Cup Series spots, that we just kind of let these go by one week to the next. It's like, oh, well, okay, that's 36 cars this week. It's 37 cars that week. It's like, well, okay, that's 4 spots that were not used there. That's 3 spots that weren't used this other week. That really needs to be fixed. And I don't know what the solution is. I mean, if there's a way to, get them a better share of the purse, if NASCAR needs to subsidize them, or whatever the solution is, but that needs to be able to happen, because what you want is new drivers to be able to compete in the Cup Series. Well, how the hell are they going to do that if all they can do is just run in the Xfinity Series and run in the Truck Series and occasionally have to beat Cup level teams, and go through all that? Not everybody's able to do that, and not everybody's able to even get those rides to begin with. And again, if NASCAR has already gone this direction with this car, where they make it closer to what is now in the Supercar Series or Sports Car Series and so forth, you're going to get drivers from those disciplines that are going to want to run this car. And they should be encouraged to do so. I think the worst thing we can do is have a situation where, we're not allowing that. And again, I've always had faith in this sport for if it's just not working for you, if you just don't belong, the sport will flush you out anyway. It's just going to, and it's unfortunate. Some have been sent out of the sport deservedly, others less so, because they just put themselves in the time of the sport where maybe it's more competitive than others, and it's unfortunate, and that's just the way it is. I think competition is the secret to all this, and it shouldn't be outrageous to say that, because it's a sport at the end of the day. Everybody's competing against each other anyway, and it's not just the people up front. The show isn't, nobody's going to show up to watch the best 5 cars in the field just race each other. You got to have a full field out there. And when you're going to have that full field, you're going to have big teams and small teams. You're going to have well-funded ones and not funded ones. You're going to have full-timers and part-timers. You got drivers sharing rides that bring sponsors in. It's always going to be a mess. They can't control all that, and they need to stop trying to do that. So that's where I think we need to be on this. And I hate it for Catherine Legg and BJ McLeod over there, for their effort in getting out there. I hate it for Helio Castroneves. We had the same controversy over the 41st spot and what a disastrous week he had out there at the same time. I hope they both come back. I hope that they improve, because think about how much of a better story that is. I'm sure everyone, for anyone that thinks that, it's like, this is so shameful, we shouldn't even have these people out there. How many of today's top Cup Series drivers have remembered like their first start? We're just 2 weeks out from Kyle Busch commiserating with Connor Zilisch about saying, hey, I finished last in my first Cup start. And indeed, obviously there were starting parks in that one. But yeah, constructively it was. He was 41st in the field. He bounced off the wall a couple times the first 11 laps and was out of the race. Connor Zilisch was running 13th at the end of the race there. Nobody else had fallen out, so when he got in the wreck with Suarez, he was in last. Does that mean either of them are not deserving of being in the Cup Series race? Of course not. You don't know what the future holds with these drivers, whatever their experience is. I think a healthy sport is a competitive one. And I think if you try to create guarantees in this sport for teams that don't need them, Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs and Penske and these other big programs out there, they don't need these extra assets. They don't need these extra guarantees. What they need is more competition, because that's going to make them better. And you're going to have the best of the open teams in the field too. Some of the best eras in the sport had fully funded teams through the entire field. Late 90s, you wouldn't have a single car out there that didn't have a sponsor on it. And you'd have 4 or 5 teams sent home that were trying to make the race, and a lot of them had sponsors. You have to nurture that environment somehow. And again, I don't have the business acumen to really understand how to get to that point, but that seems to be what the first thing you need to do, is to strive for that to begin with. And I'm not convinced that we are, especially from this bizarre outrage over this Catherine Legg thing. I mean, come on, there's got to be something else to solve on this. So again, having more open teams out there, having more practice for everyone, and just making a more beneficial weekend for anybody that's trying to compete. That's all you really need to do. We're never more than just a couple of small changes away from kind of bringing things the right direction there too. So yeah, I think that's the way to look at it. But it was an interesting debate, and I want to definitely bring my 2 cents in there at the same time. The other big story from this week was certainly revolving around Carl Edwards. Edwards, of course, being the subject of a couple of things. First of all, on the broadcasting angle, hearing he's going to be part of the broadcasting crew for Amazon later this year. Again, I think that's going to be a great pickup. I think I would anticipate, especially from his Dale Jr. interview, that he's probably going to give a similar performance to Kyle Busch that we saw this past weekend. Again, drivers from a very similar era. I would hope that he takes up Junior's offer to, kind of get some laps, or at least, kind of figure out the next gen car. I know he has a lot of reluctance to, and he gave a very interesting interview this week. I do want to touch on that a little bit too in this discussion. Again, I think that if he has some more familiarity with this next gen car and how it operates, and then I think that's really going to help his commentary, especially since it's going to be for Cup Series races there. I think that would be great. I'm very excited to hear what he's going to be doing in the booth, and I think that's going to be, it's great to have him be a part of this sport. Of course, he gave that emotional speech back at the Hall of Fame banquet earlier this year, and then, of course, this week, I echo the same endorsements everyone else had this week of his interview on the Dale Jr. download. It was great. I listened to the whole thing between going to and coming back from work back on, I think it was Tuesday this week. It was very compelling, very revealing. And I think one of the best things that Edwards discussed in there was the consequence of the gimmicks in this sport. And I think we've all speculated about this, especially in the moment where, Edwards had that horrible wreck at Homestead when he was dominating that race, finishing, running in second to Kyle Larson, right where he needed to be to win the championship. Had a tight battle with the other championship contenders. And then this caution comes out. where, by the way, Dylan Lupton got entirely too much hate for. He had a flat tire. He pulled off the track. He did everything he needed to do. He didn't force this caution flag to come out. He didn't even spin the car out. They showed a replay, and Steve Letarte and the other guys in the booth are just kind of ignoring it. It's like, oh, well, this is why the caution came out. And you watch it like, well, wait, why? Like, he just got out of the way. What's the problem? We don't even know if there's debris on the track. But, of course, the rest is history. Edwards gets in the wreck with Logano, obliterates his car. He kind of talks to the other pit crew members there at the end. And that turns out to be his last Cup start. And, we are led to believe that, that there was something that happened there that was kind of going through his mind. And it was interesting in this interview, I think one of the most compelling parts of it, where he basically said, yeah, I mean, there was like, he was thinking, all right, let's talk about next year, and we're going to go back and we're going to do this, and we'll win some races, and we'll get back up there, and we'll go through the different rounds and the playoffs and stuff, and we'll get to the championship 4, and then there's probably going to be a late race caution. But if there's a late race caution, you're a good enough driver, you can get through this, and you can get a good run out there. And he just realized how much madness that was, and it was really eye-opening to hear him describe this, because how do you think these other drivers in the field are thinking about this? I know that there seems to be this presumption that everybody's on board with this, and much like, and I'm sure there's plenty already talking about Josh Berry being in the playoffs because he won a race today. It's like, that doesn't matter. It's way too early to even think about the championship here at this point. Let's just celebrate the win for what it is. But yeah, it makes me wonder, like, how many more of these drivers are thinking the same thing? I mean, think of a guy like Denny Hamlin, who has been in that position more times than he can count, in this format, getting into the championship for, being very good at Phoenix, having a history there, preparing as best he can, winning a number of races, and then finishing 4th just in the race in one of the shortest races of the year. Maybe a caution comes out the wrong time or whatever, and that's it. It's easy to think. I was covering the race in 2021 at Phoenix, where, Kyle Larson won 10 races that year. He very nearly did not win that championship. People are very quick to forget this, but it's like, oh, Kyle Larson, he won all these races, and of course he's going to win the championship. It's like, first of all, championship isn't about winning the most races. I had an interesting discussion about that with a certain somebody this week as well. But he very nearly still lost that championship. Martin Truex is going to win that race. And if David Starr didn't have that brake failure and drop some debris on the track, which was going to be a caution, it would have been an entirely different story. And I know it sounds like it goes in the category of, well, I would have won if I didn't lose. But, again, it's true. He was not winning that race at that point, the way it was playing out, especially how late in the race that caution came out at that moment. And, how much of an effect that would have had on Larson if he goes through a year and he wins all these races, and he goes through the hoops of the playoff championship, and he gets to the championship 4 race, and he's almost in position to get there, but he just isn't having quite the great race that he needs to. There's already disappointment if you don't put together the best overall season in a championship. And this is where we kind of had a little bit of an interesting debate on this week, because, of course, the ghosts of 2003 are coming back up again. We're hearing about this with Christopher Bell coming into this race. It's like, oh, he wins 3 of the first 4 races, and he's not the point leader. It's like, well, neither was Bill Elliott when he won 4 of the first 5 races. Davey Allison still had the point lead because Allison won the 500 when Elliott wrecked. DNFs need to matter. Consistency still does need to matter. A full season championship is the more compelling way to go here. It was like, oh, well, people didn't like it when Ryan Newman won 8 races in 2003 or whatever the number was, and he didn't win the championship. It's like, look, he was inconsistent. You can't be inconsistent. You can't have multiple last place finishes like he did when he finished last in the 500, when he got obliterated at the beginning of Talladega, when he had other bad runs through the year. Yes, he won a lot of races, a lot of them on fuel mileage in particular. He deserved to have that notice. But again, it's not always been that case. Whatever the point system has been, you've had drivers win, the most races or not the most races and pull off the championship. And that's the way it should be. It should be who puts together the best season. And you don't know when the green flag drops in the Daytona 500 what kind of season you need to have to win a championship. I will bet you in isolation that Mark Martin in his 1998 championship thought that if he was presented the statistics that he had at the end of that year when he started the year, it's like, oh wow, I'm probably going to win the championship. But then instead, Jeff Gordon just had that much more excellent of a year, winning 13 races. And not only did Martin not win the championship, but Jeff Gordon clinched it before the season was over. That's just the way it is. A matter of excellence should be across an entire year. And okay, yeah, maybe a part of it is wins, but it's not the only part of it. And this is the problem with the playoff system, is it's going to be exactly the same every year. Everybody's going to go through the same machine. It's going to be 16, 12, 4, 16, 12, 8, and 4. And it's going to be if you're best in that race. And if you don't go through every single one of those hoops, if you trip on one of those and faceplant, that's just it. And it doesn't matter how good you were the first part of that year. So, again, there's part, 38 in my series of gripes about the full season point system. But again, there's just always so much evidence of it. And that Edwards interview was so revealing. If you haven't listened to it, I definitely recommend giving it a listen. He goes into it. It's very eye-opening. He's very candid in it. Dale Jr. is fantastic at these interviews. He really, obviously he empathizes from his own Cup career as well. It made for a great listen. I'd highly recommend giving it listening to it as well. Speaking of Earnhardt, another thing to kind of touch on here too, there was news that Amazon's going to do a new 4-part miniseries on Dale Earnhardt's life. Dale Jr. himself and others from the inner circle there are going to be involved, which is very exciting. I know that Dale Earnhardt's story feels like well-trodden ground. I mean, certainly even Emp Lemon's video, I think, is probably one of the best overall conversations of Earnhardt's entire career. Of course, I made my own contribution with the first 4 parts of 500 Days there as well. There's a lot, and I'm kind of interested to hear that, obviously a person, a larger-than-life figure in the sport there, there's probably still some things that haven't been explored fully, or maybe explored in a different way. It sounds like you got some real horsepower behind this in terms of the funding and the talent that's being involved in it there. And I'm hopeful it's going to be good. I'm hopeful it's going to be interesting. I do maintain, and I felt this way particularly when Junior retired, that there is a bit of a Earnhardt singularity in the sport, that everything it just kind of focuses entirely, especially post 2001. I mean, Junior's had so much focus in the sport, and deservedly so. I think he, in some respects, because he's very much a great ambassador for the sport, and especially its history. He's not the only one, but he's definitely the biggest and most prestigious one there for sure. And it's important to have him involved in that sense. And I don't know how much more nuance that can be brought to the story, but I'll be interested to see it. I mean, of course I'll watch it. It's going to be interesting to see. I'll be interested if, certain aspects, I'll be interested if Neil Bonnet is featured prominently in the story. If anything else that gets him more attention and his bid for a spot in the Hall of Fame, I think that would be a positive there too. I think maybe that would be kind of the angles, kind of talk more about other people around him and who those people were. We get bits and pieces of it here, kind of from, the racing itself, and then kind of from, Michael Waltrip's perspective in Blink of an Eye, or the Dale, the CMT documentaries from years ago. Something kind of fresh to it there will be interesting. But, again, hopefully we'll have something come together. But I do think, there is still kind of an Earnhardt centrality, and singularity since, especially since 2001. It's been getting progressively more intense, and it intensified even more towards the end of Junior's career, with the nationwide series, Dale Jr. Performance Report during the broadcasts and everything else that's happened since then. I don't want to make it sound like that's not deserved to an extent, because of course he's been the most popular driver in the sport. Of course he has a very popular podcast, and of course the Earnhardts have been a big figure in the sport's history. I just feel like the rest of the sport's history should deserve equal attention. I think that there's a lot of other stories that aren't getting told that should be brought up, and some of those stories may still involve Earnhardt. Much as when Ricky Rudd was talking about his brushes with Earnhardt in his career, or when I was talking with Derek Cope for the book there, and of course the fact that the 1990 Daytona 500 wasn't his first brush with him. That's the interesting part, I think. And then that could be used to tell somebody else's story. That's why I knew when I published the J.D. McDuffie book famously, not famously, but I mean, the way I put it, in my own mind, I remember this being very intentional. I knew when I wrote my first book on a NASCAR driver, the first 2 words in that book had to be Dale Earnhardt, and they are, because it was the context of, talking about how dangerous the sport was, and, how this accident, it was the most serious one since JD's accident. That's just the way it is. Maybe one day it'll be different. I don't know who that other driver would be that's discussed, but that's kind of where we are right now. But it's just unfortunate because the sports history is so colorful with so many interesting personalities. And I'm very excited to bring this to you guys as well. This dovetails perfectly in the next video I'm working on here. As I was talking about last week with the Cartoon Network Wacky Racing video. A lot of progress has been made on that this week. Been working on that. I'm still aiming for a late March, early April release date. First, of course, in the Patreon. They'll have access to all 3 parts of this video. Big thing I was working on this week is getting all the placeholders in there to finish the graphics and stuff. I got to get the text effects and the layers in there. And then I got to tweak the audio to make sure everything's sounding as good as it possibly can. And then once that's set, that'll be pretty much it. So I think we're getting pretty good on that. I'm very excited to get that out there and share it with you guys, because this is a story that I feel, despite the spectacle of the Cartoon Network Wacky Racing program from 1996 through 2000, there's still a lot that I think, is needs kind of a fresh look at it too. Especially with the Cartoon Network itself going through so many changes. My goodness, I didn't realize where its position is in streaming services. I just saw like the post earlier today about what Looney Tunes cartoons getting kicked off of the Max channel. And I guess Max is where some of the Cartoon Network stuff ended up and everything. I don't even know what that looks like anymore. I mean, a lot of that stuff I just watch it on YouTube or whatever. But that's another story too. So very excited to get that going and hopefully have that for you guys to watch here very soon. If you haven't checked out the trailer, of course, it's here on this channel. You can see that as well. So very excited to get that to you guys. It's been almost my singular focus. I'm trying not to get blindsided by the trip coming up here, because there's a couple things I really need to kind of prepare for that. So I'm hoping to kind of get that going this week here, because I really want to maximize that trip as well. Going out to North Carolina, I have some business I want to do out there between the Rockingham and Talladega races. And we'll find out, how that goes too. So, I think that's about it. Oh, one other thing on the Earnhardt documentary. Last bro, my younger brother here, he always takes exception to if we're talking about the Earnhardt mythos, he always takes exception to all those clips that shows him on a farm or on a tractor or something like that. He and I always have these discussions about like what our perception of the sport was as children, growing up. And I always liked, kind of his viewpoint where, race car drivers, like all they do is they live at the racetrack. Like they just come out, they like live. He had one description to me, he told me once, where that they would, he liked the idea, again, very young at the time there, where the drivers would live in the scoring pylon. And like, they would have like bunk beds in there or something like that. And each bed had like the car cover was their blanket or something like that. And they would just stay there. And then they come out of the scoring pylon and they get ready to race or something. And I guess they go from one track scoring pylon to another or something like that. And again, it sounds silly, but I remember I had my own perception of it. I remember seeing Days of Thunder in 1990, 1991. And I really thought that is like, oh no, they don't live in the scoring pylon. They all live in the transporters. It's just like Cole Trickle, right? Like you have the car up here, and then you have like a living quarter in the entire truck, where it's like the whole scene with the the part where they get pulled over and everything. Where you have the crew chief, you have the driver, you have like the team, and you have some friends they pick up, and they all just hang out. And they got like the walls with the pictures of the car everywhere. And they're like drinking moonshine and stuff. I was like, oh, I kind of figured that's what all the teams did. It was like a band, instead of being on a tour bus, that they all were on the transporter. It's like, it blew my mind when I got a bit older, and I was like, wait a minute, you just have one or two drivers of the transporter, and the room that's in the transporter is just really small. I thought there was like they just hung out in there, and that was the thing. They just kind of left in February and came back in November, and they were just on a world tour until then. I always thought that was fun. Like that was kind of my thought back then. I don't know if you guys have similar experiences or something you thought about like maybe earlier in the sports history. But those were ones that kind of made me laugh because yeah, I remember thinking that. I remember thinking that that was really really cool. I remember the first time, much later, of course, doing the media work and being invited in one of these transporters and just seeing that. Yeah, it's like of course there's no room. You got like the place where you got all the tools and stuff, and you got like this little room at the back of it there and everything. And it's like, oh man, it's not like it's not like it's in the movies or anything, but few things are. But I don't know. That's always one thing that always stands out in my memory from that there too. Let's see. But yeah, I gotta admit that would be cool. No, I like that too. I like the creativity. I was challenging him with this, and he was telling about the thing with the scoring pylon. I guess he was pretty upset about them getting rid of scoring pylons at these tracks too last year too. Come to think of it, but I like the idea of it. Yeah, like each of them like have like a bed. It's like a multiple story building, and it's like yeah, it's like their beds. What do they use for the blankets? It's like oh, we use the car covers, of course. It's like oh, well, okay, yeah, sure, that works. No, I like that. It sounds rad. It almost sounds like again, make if you made a NASCAR cartoon, that would probably be the setup for it, or at least made a better one than NASCAR Racers was. But something like that would be kind of fun, be like a wacky racing kind of thing. Um, let's see here. That's yeah, I think that's about all I have on that. We'll jump into trivia, and I see a couple super chats I need to jump up here too. So thank you very much for those here at the same time. Oh, Brian, I see you here in the chat here as well. Thank you for tuning in. Earnhardt Doc will touch a lot on the family. Okay, that's good. So hopefully we will get a good look at the inner circle here. That's the always thing with the Earnhardt mystique that I've kind of wondered about is that it always seems like his inner circle was very very small. Like I'm not even sure. It's so small. I'm not even sure Junior was really in on it there. I mean, as extraordinary as I think it was, I think that he was very close with of course, with Teresa, and of course with Neil Bonnet, and with maybe Ty Norris as well. Steve Wade, even I would probably consider in that circle too, from his interviews on the Scene Vault podcast. But around that, beyond that, well, Richard Childress, can't overlook that, of course, him too. But beyond that, hard to say, hard to say. But hopefully that'll be something that gets revealed here too. Also, again, the other thing I'm very excited about here for the Cartoon Network video. I'm working on getting the pictures integrated in the video, and a lot of these, Brian, of course, being here in the chat tonight here from his archives there, the BRH Racing archives, tremendous asset to this here. I think it's going to be. I really want to make sure those shine in this here too, because this is very much a video not just about the drivers and the teams, but it's also about the paint schemes and what a paint scheme entails too, because this really changed things a lot in the 90s and maybe made it much more closer to something kind of like you'd see today. You'd see some of these trends that still exist on current paint schemes, maybe others that don't, and you kind of see where that came from. So I'm very excited to bring that to you as well. And Brian, of course, is one of the very big parts of that effort there as well. So we're getting that together, and that'll be coming up here very soon. So we'll do some trivia questions here. I do have something for show and tell, but we'll bring out the Trivial Pursuit deal here. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card are the categories. So feel free to mention this here as well. And then we'll get into that there too. Do you think you ever get Teresa on the Dale Jr. download? I don't know. That's a good question. That's a good question. I'm sure that's been requested a lot, and I'm not going to pretend to understand the family dynamics there, because I know that could be real complicated. It would be interesting. It would definitely be interesting, especially now that you got a lot of the big ones here with like, the Carl Edwards one was a big one, and some of these other interviews along the way. But we'll find out if that's going to be the story there too. So let's see. I'm going to get a little bit of water here in the meantime. Do we have any calls on inspection yet? I don't believe so. We're probably still in the early phases of it here. I'll check this in the meantime here while we get picks in. I don't see anything quite yet. Alrighty. Let's see. Thoughts on the F1 movie trailer? No tires, just gas. Good question. That looks like fun. That looks like fun. I can't help but think about Driven, honestly. I know I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people were bringing that up. It seems like this was the movie that Stallone wanted to make. Famously, the Driven movie was supposed to be about Formula One and end up being about kart. There was some kind of restriction on access or something going on there, and that's probably why the stakes seemed so much absurdly higher than they probably should have been in the story. But is what it is. But hopefully it's going to be a good show. I think the latest one made it seem like a little bit of fun. Looks like there's a little bit of a good dynamic there. I'm enthused that the person behind the Top Gun Maverick movie is involved. I like that Hans Zimmer's doing the soundtrack. I like that they played the chain in the trailer because I'm hopeful that they're going to play the solo somewhere in the movie. I know that a lot of times they play music in trailers that don't get played in the movies, but I'm hopeful this is going to be the exception there. I'll be seeing it for sure. I like that they kind of have the main character kind of being in sports cars and then trying to get back into Formula One or something. That's kind of fun. Again, I can't not think about Driven, and I think that's going to just make me laugh. I'll probably come up with like a bingo card for that one and try to come up with things from Driven. And it's like, okay, which of these things is also going to be in the movie there? But we'll find out. I mean, it's coming up in June, so it's going to be right around the corner here on that one. Let's see. We get the coin trick. Yeah, who knows? See, that's the thing. It's going to have to be like one of those. And yeah, is this going to be Denny Hamlin's new favorite movie? Maybe. Who knows? Let's see here. Let's see here. Oh, Bernie Ecclestone shot it down. Okay, that makes sense. I know they have he certainly had a lot of control over the visual aspects of the sport here. So let's see. One thing I had here, I guess we'll see. We'll do show and tell, and we'll do kind of the super chats here as well, and jump into that. One thing I kind of found, I was looking through some stuff here in my archives, and one kind of interesting bit here was, of course, I've always been very passionate about collecting diecast, especially the 64th scales. And this is kind of an interesting thing. I made this in the year 2000. So I was 16, 17, thereabouts, making it. So I printed this out here. It just says 2000 Winston Cup Silly Season on here. And this one, what I did was I went online and I printed out pictures of like the new paint schemes that were coming out that year. And of course, that 2000, you had a new body style on the Chevys and the Fords too. So I think I just included all of them. And what's interesting, and I'll show you kind of this interesting part here. So there's kind of the pictures. I just printed out pictures of all these different paint schemes that came out. And the ones with the black construction paper are ones I picked up that year. And I guess we'll go through those at the same time. But you'll notice one of them that came up is, of course, the Cartoon Network car. There's a Wally Dallenbach car there in 2000. And that was a hard paint scheme to find. But these were all printed on just an old inkjet printer here. It looks like a lot of these I'm sure from J-Ski. Let me see if I can find the J-Ski trademark or mark on the screen there too. But a lot of, again, such a great year for paint schemes back then. You got Steve Park and Bobby Hamilton up here. Really like this Stacy Compton one. I didn't realize that 64 scale one was made until just recently. Johnny Benson's Lycos one. Yeah, it's a different version of the scheme. Looks like it's the, I think that's that's probably the second generation one there with the orange numbers on the roof. I know they had the black one with the white stripes under it. I think that's the later version they went with. You got Robbie Gordon's Menards car there, Brett Bodine there, and the Ralph's number 11. And of course, not understanding this back then, Yep, Daytona pictures. Yep, there you go, Brian. Actually, are some of these yours, Brian? Probably they might be. So they probably get some of these. I don't know if you were shooting there that weekend, but see if some of these look familiar. That certainly that Irwin one looks familiar from that one. And just looking at Ricky Craven, Bobby Hamilton down there too, or Kenny Wallace rather. There you go, Hamilton in 2001. Ed Barrier, the Hills Brothers car there for Judy Donlavey, and then Chad Little's on this. Let me see if I can pull these off here and take a look at which ones are behind here. Obviously, in numerical order. Does it just come off here? Let's see. Okay. Yeah, some of these I do remember picking up. We got, let's see. There's more tape on this than I thought there would be. There we go. We got Terry Labonte's Kellogg's car there from 2000. Yeah, they did make that. This will be kind of interesting, actually, because there's some of these that they didn't make, and there's other ones that would always come out, like, very early in the year. I know I found some of these afterwards, like the Irwin one and the Elliott Sadler, but there's other ones like the Ricky Craven's 2000, like the Midwest Transit car. I don't think that ever got, like, a release or something. But this was back in an era where you had racing champions and you had Hot Wheels and you had Winner's Circle, and all of them had their own rights. Okay, so here we had, so there we go. We got Terry Labonte and Dale Jr. on that one. Let's see. There you go. Jr. on that one. So Winner's Circle on that. Let me see if I can just have a few others here. This looks like LePage, I believe, down here at the bottom. This tape it's been holding on there for 25 years. Oh, here we go. This looks like a kind of an interesting picture on this one. There we go. Yeah, it is LePage. And I got the family click car. There we go. Kind of the reveal of the 16 there. That was always kind of an interesting paint scheme there too. Let's see. This is probably, which one? Oh, that's Schrader. Okay. Interesting. It's interesting I put Schrader in there because I always figured that paint scheme had been pretty much the same since Ernie Irvan drove it. But the M&M's Pontiac on that one there, above that. And let's see. It should be Presley's down here, it looks like. Yeah, that tape's coming off a little. Oh, come on. Does that come off there okay? There you go. Robert Presley's. I think that usually got made in, I think Hot Wheels and Racing Champions made that car that year. And then on the upper corner, I should have just taken this off before the show here, but it's actually coming off pretty easy. Just use some magic tape and clip these on here. It's just, I love the ambition of this where it's like, yeah, they're going to make all these paint schemes. Oh, Bill Elliott's car, the 2000 version. There you go. Had some good runs in that car there too. That was always fun. But yeah, this just turned up. I had it in a box there, and I remember printing this out years ago and just making this. It's like, okay, if you ever go by like a Target or back when Toys R Us existed or something like that, trying to check those out. Oh, we have tech inspection on here. Your tech complete. Doot. Check that out. I should just take all those black pieces off. Got to put that in the scanner there. But that'll probably be another one to check out there. There it is. Yes, 46 seconds ago. Cup Tech complete. Barry is the winner. Engines taken for the dyno. Chastain, Cindric, Bell, and Byron getting their engines taken to the dyno. So congratulations. Josh Berry has officially scored his first Cup Series win. So congratulations to him on that. And, of course, your last place run will be Cody Ware, and that feature will be up there later tonight. So, yeah. The tape for that, Jude, those are ones I actually found on diecast, and then I put pieces over that. So it's kind of like a checklist. Like, I didn't want to mark over them, so I just kind of put paper over those. But it's kind of interesting, yeah, which ones were. There used to be ones, it seemed like there was always the Valvoline car and the Caterpillar car were some like the first ones that always got made. Whether it was Johnny Benson or Mark Martin or Valvoline, and then Caterpillar with Ward Burton there. But yeah, some of these, only like 24th scale. Like, I know Brett Bodine and the Johnny Benson one. But but really interesting though. But yeah, kind of an interesting look back at collecting that back in the day. I guess one of these days you could bring this to some of those gypsy tents or something like that and see which ones they have from back then. But that was always a fun year. That was a fun year for sure. Let's see here. Okay, we got the results on that, so we'll keep that out. Where were we with the categories? We'll check this as well. JCQ text complete. Take a look through here. Oh gosh, here we go. Let's see, tracks, teams, tracks. Let's see. Okay, actually, I'm seeing a lot for tracks here. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah, we'll do some track questions. That sounds fine. Oh, we went out. Oh, we went out of focus. Sorry. Let's fix that. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, I know it always goes through that. Okay, is that better? That looks better. Hopefully it wasn't like that too long. I know when I was holding this up to the screen, I'm sure that screwed up the focus there. Okay, good. Thank you for letting me know. Definitely let me know when it does that, because I would hate for this to be blurry the whole day. We don't want to give anybody headaches here after a full day of racing, for sure. All right, we'll do some tracks questions here. Let's see. All right, here we go. First question. What 17-year-old won the 1998 pole at Nashville in only his second Busch start? That is the question. What 17-year-old won the 1998 pole at Nashville in only his second Busch start? And while we're doing this, I'll do the super chats here as well. Thank you very much on the... Oh, goodness. I need to catch up with a few of these. Thank you. My goodness. Do I have them all on this one? I think I do. Alrighty. So first one right here, Michael Jensen for $10. Thank you very much. Finishes like this are when Mike Joy shows why he's great. He's a lot like us. He doesn't like all the BS, and it shows in his calls. Today was a day that had nothing funky about it. So his call was plus. So like A plus, I assume there. Yeah, absolutely agree. I did sense at the end of this cup race that Mike was really kind of guiding the conversation to Josh Berry. And Mike has always had a good eye for underdog teams and underdog drivers as well. And first-time winners, I'm sure that's something that he gets even more excited about. And this was a great story. And I like that he kind of guided that for Boyer and Harvick to keep sharing memories of that. I'm surprised that, Harvick didn't really mention as much about Barry driving his car, at least not that I heard. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that came up during the call there. But yeah, I thought he did a fine job there at the end to bring him home. And there was plenty enough time to kind of let that build, especially, you're kind of worried a little bit about if there's going to be a late race caution, because it always seems like there's going to be. Certainly the one that Gragson had came out of nowhere. But yeah, I thought he did a fine job out there, and definitely agree for sure. Let's see. Last year, the playoff sticker. Oh, for winning Vegas. Yes, thank you, Matt Jones, for reminding me on that as well. Let's see. And yeah, Brian, definitely agree. Yeah, certainly, more great drivers out there running late models. And yeah, if they get a break or two, they could be right up there. That would be fantastic. Just shows, they're out there. They're still out there working their tails off. Rusty Ralston for 1021. Thank you so much. Hey, Brock, I missed the race because I was busy with other things. Watched the new Looney Tunes movie. Very good. I'm thinking about watching that this week, too. I think that'd be a wonderful way to build up for the, it's Warner Brothers versus Cartoon Network, but actually that's part of the story too in the video too. But that one sounds like fun, but very glad to hear that we have Wood Brothers got another win. Have a nice week. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for the super chat there as well. Yeah, that Day the Earth Blew Up movie looks like a lot of fun. I wish they did more marketing for it. I heard a little bit about it last year. I thought it was just going to go like straight to Hulu or something. But that'll be fun. So actually, yeah, Lastbro and myself may check that out this week. So hopefully that'll be. I'm glad to hear it's good. It looks like a blast. Let's see, Bowser Jr. XD for $4.99. Thank you again for your super chat. In other motorsports news, in the Australian Grand Prix, Isaac Hadjar is your last place finisher after wrecking on the formation lap. Yes, no, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, rough deal there for him. Mentioned that, touched on that a bit there earlier. Again, it's a frustrating situation. I can't imagine the pressure these guys put themselves under. And then, of course, it's the first race of the year with a new contract and a new ride. But he wasn't alone. It was a tough race for all the newcomers. And it was a tough race for some of the veterans. I mean, Fernando Alonso wrecked. I mean, my goodness. Interesting to see play out, and definitely worth a mention. So thank you very much thank you for the super chat on that as well, Bowser Jr. Oh, goodness. And Bowser Jr. again for $4.99. Thank you. MotoGP Trackhouse driver Ai Ogura is your last place finisher after disqualification for improper software. Brutal to follow a fifth place debut. I don't follow MotoGP that much, but thank you for the insight there on that, because again, it's what I have seen is always very competitive. The closest I've come to that is I heard about all the modifications made to Laguna Seca with motorcycle racing in mind. I don't know if that's part of the same circuit or not. I'm really not that well versed in it there. But unfortunate deal there to have a win taken away for something that sounds like it was pretty far out of the driver's control, at least from what that's describing there too. But a rough deal for that competitor. Beast of Metal 1989 for $10. Thank you so much. From September 6th to September 24th, Hampton Roads CW affiliate was WGNT. Prior to that, UPN O&O network showed preempted by college basketball often. In September of 24, CW went to subchannel of WVBT, the Fox affiliate. No NASCAR preemptions. Okay. While it may not be as prestigious to be on subchannels, being on main affiliate channel, for as small as the CW has become, it may be more beneficial for people who still want to watch. No, thank you for the insight on that. It's definitely, I assume you mean years, the September of 06 to 24. Yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating that there's these problems with the CW this year. I mean, I've been hearing little bits and pieces of that since Daytona here, and I wasn't sure how widespread it was, but it really seems like it's been an issue a lot of places. I mean, we just use, for our frame of reference, we use like Hulu over here and just pull it up that way, and we've had no issue with it on this end, rather than finding a specific channel. But obviously you got people that are on cable or satellite or whatever other options are out there, or if you use a different app, and then apparently their app doesn't use it. It just sounds like a mess, and I'm very disappointed that NASCAR didn't work this out earlier, or if the network didn't say something or whatever. This had to be known by somebody coming into this year, and it's unfortunate it didn't work out, because this was a big shift, and they were kind of phasing in the CW deal last year with NBC's portion and piggybacking on their crew. Yeah, hopefully something gets worked out on that end there too. No NASCAR preemptions. Wow, what a mess. But again, I'm still kind of figuring out more details on it. But but thank you for the information on that, Beast of Metal. That's a good lead in to kind of understand the situation a bit more. Let's see here. Whoop, I think I missed. Did I miss that one? Okay. Yep. No, I got that one. That was last week. And I got that there too. Okay, good. I think we're caught up on the super chat. So thank you so much again, everyone, for the super chats. They are not expected, but they're always appreciated. So thank you very much. We'll go into this on here. We'll get the question once again. What 17-year-old won the 1998 pole at Nashville in only his second Busch start? Let's see. People are still upset of Zanardi's move over Brian Herta. Yeah, I mean, come on. That was just phenomenal. Like, I mean, sometimes something is so great that you can't worry about the details too much. Seeing a lot of guesses for Atwood, Casey Atwood. All right. Brian and Jimmy Clements and Zachary Leffler and Robbie Burns. Several of those here. And, of course, the answer is indeed Casey Atwood. You guys got it. Casey Atwood is correct. All righty. Michael Disdier is back for Homestead. First Truck Series race since 2018. Wow. Okay. I love it when you get somebody that gets back on the circuit, because then, of course, it makes the great icebreaker question is, yeah, what have you been up to since then? So hopefully we'll get some more information on that too. Alrighty. Oh gosh, we still have 95 people in here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. If you're new to this, hope you're enjoying the stream. This is the latter part of it there. If you have any questions from the race weekend, feel free to, don't be shy. Go ahead and jump in the chat. We'll do some trivia questions here to wrap up here towards the end. Let's see here. We're in the tracks category. What's the next question we got here? Let's see. Let's see. How about that? Here we go. What Tennessean? Isn't Josh Berry from Tennessee, isn't he? That would be a good connection there, too. What Tennessean won the 1960 inaugural World 600 at Charlotte? What Tennessean won the 1960 inaugural World 600 at Charlotte? That is the question. There we go. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Brian, you're really fast on the button there, too. You looks like you're almost one of the first ones to get this one, too. You got Jack Smith and Johnson and Waltrip and Joe Lee Johnson. Jack Smith and Waltrip. Okay, here we go. What Tennessean won the 1960 inaugural World 600 at Charlotte? And the answer is indeed Joe Lee Johnson. A lot of you got that. Brian, I think you were the first one on that one there, too. Charles Peterson, you're the first one with Joe Lee Johnson on there. So there you go. Very, very fast. Okay, we got to get some harder questions. Get some harder ones. Most people are getting these. Let's see. Alrighty, here we go. We're looking for a name of a state for this one. So get your fingers on your buzzers right here. What state had a total of 64 concrete, dirt, oval, drag, or road courses by 1998? What state had a total of 64 concrete, dirt, oval, drag, or road courses by 1998 is the question. Let me pull my microphone back. I think I'm harshing this a little bit. Junis Corpusalo, Death Killer, again with the confusing names. And ready. What state had a total of 64 concrete, dirt, oval, drag, or road courses by 1998 is the question. Kyrgyzstan. I'm not sure if you got it, Death Killer. It's a tough one. North Dakota, California, North Carolina, New Jersey. Let's see. It was mentioned in the 2005 Coke 600. There you go. Texas, Japan. We're looking for states, not a country here. Read it one more time. What state had a total of 64 concrete, dirt, oval, drag, or road courses by 1998? Here we go. The answer is Texas. Texas. Eric Ray, I see you got that. Were you the first one? A lot of you guys California. That sounded right, because again, that sounds like a big number, especially for all those different ones. I don't know if we have, I assume we have concrete tracks, or at least we did in 1998. Eric Ray, I think you were the first one. No tires, just gas. You got it. Am I missing somebody else here? I think you got it there on that. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah, a bit tricky. Texas is the correct answer. Now, it may well have changed since then, but at least in 1998, that was the case. Okay, we'll do a couple more here. Okay. Well, I think we had this one before, but this is a good one, so we'll go ahead and do this again. What is the HA short for in Humpy Wheeler's name? What's the HA short for in Humpy Wheeler's name? There you go. What's the HA short for in Humpy Wheeler's name? That is our next question. I have the microphone right at bottom out of shot here, so I need to find a good place to hold this. There we go. HA. So what both the initials stand for. What's the HA short for in Humpy Wheeler's name? You got Henry Augustus, Henry Allen, Hand Associate, Howard Allen, Henry Augustus, Humphrey Allen, Howard Augustine. Got Howard there. Yeah, the news about Fontana and the track down there. I mean, who knows what's going on with that? I know Junior posted a video this week saying that it doesn't seem like it's feasible with the reconstruction and obviously the number of regulations and so forth in California is always tricky. Obviously, they've done it before, but back when they built Fontana, that area was not nearly as populated as it is now. If there's curfew regulations and stuff, that could be a problem. Indeed, this is actually the same problem that's going on with a lot of people that lost their homes in the Palisades fire right now. They're having problems. A lot of those places are just now starting to get cleaned up, and a very lengthy recovery process for them. So I don't know what the future is. I think NASCAR does need to have a track in LA. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be in that spot. Maybe they're just holding on to that piece and just maybe, improves in value and they can cash out of that and build the track someplace else. It's a possibility. I don't know. It's just sad because it was such a beautiful track. I was just starting to kind of get, used to taking trips down there and we had that last one with the beautiful snow on the mountains there and everything and had the double header with the Xfinity race getting pushed back. I thought the track put on a very nice venue there at the end. Hopefully something gets worked out. I mean, it just doesn't seem, I don't know. I don't know what the plans are. I mean, you had this, and then you actually had a short track with Irwindale, and they had a wonderful send off for that track last winter. Then it gets torn down. Ryan Vargas was part of the send off there and everything. It just doesn't seem like the right time right now somehow, which is unfortunate. So I don't know what would change that. Hopefully something does because. There's a lot of great race fans in LA, in that area. It may seem like a fickle market, but, the crowds at the Clash, when we covered that was really good. And even when they had the rain delays that really snake bit that last race there, they still had a good turnout for that event as well. We'll see what happens there too. It never gets another date down there. I mean, you better believe we're going to try to cover that there for sure. What's the HA short for in Humpy Wheeler's name? And the answer is Howard Augustine. Howard Augustine. I think a number of you got that. I know, Brian, I know you got Howard, so there you go. So then Howard Augustine. It looks like Carter Schum was the first one to get both initials there. Jimmy Clements, you got it. There you go. Robbie Burns, you got it. Hank Aaron, Herbert Allen. Yeah, there's a lot of good guesses on all of that there, too. How about NASCAR during a rain delay sends drivers to K1 speed? Yeah, there you go. Something like that. Send them to a go-kart track. That's always what Portland reminded me of, the current Xfinity Series track. It always looks like a go-kart track, but kind of an interesting deal there, too. We'll do a couple more here. This one here. Who won the first caution-free Mason-Dixon 500 in 1971? Don't look it up. Try to guess it here. I'll read it again here. Who won the first caution-free Mason-Dixon 500 in 1971? Just got sent a great picture from Randy Klein on Twitter here of Cody Ware's car at Vegas. Big thanks to him. He was among the people that were sending great pictures from trackside there this weekend. So we got that together as we'll get the article together on that. Just thank you for that. From this weekend. There we go. Now you can see it as well on your feed. We got guesses. Okay. Oh, we got a lot of guesses coming in here. Here we go. Petty's and Hamilton's and Isaacs and Yarborough's and so forth. Lime Rock Park does go-karts. Oh, okay. There we go. That could be good. Street race in San Diego. Yeah, maybe. San Diego's pretty. Used to have crew competitions down there. That was always our big one in early April. It was just gorgeous. Rowing in the harbor down there. That was fun. Who won the first caution-free Mason-Dixon 500 in 1971? The answer is Bobby Allison. Bobby Allison was so good at Dover. My goodness. Bobby Allison is the correct answer. Did anybody get that? Some people got Bobby Isaac. Petty, Hamilton, Isaac, Petty, Pearson, Yarborough. Was at the race in Atlanta. So I go, oh, you gotta guess. I believe it is Dover, though. Yeah, the Mason-Dixon makes it sound like it would be like Darlington or something like on a literal border state, but yeah. No? I don't think anybody got that. No, nobody got that. Bobby Allison was correct. Yeah, Bobby Allison at Dover is interesting. I don't know what it was about that track. I know there's all those stories about him rolling up the windows in his car and cranking the heat up, and that was always a very challenging race there for sure. But yeah, Bobby Allison, in fact, even won the Dover race when J.D. McDuffie won his only pole. So that came up there too. Let's see. No, that. All right, let's see. No, not that one. Not that one. Not that one. That one's too easy. No, not that one. No, that one's too easy too. Shoot. These track questions are trying to find a really good one here. No, that one's, yeah. Guys probably get that one too. Let's see. Alrighty. Okay, we'll wrap up with this one. We'll do one more question here, folks. What track had back-to-back races without a caution in the 70s? Try not to look it up there. What track had back-to-back races without a caution in the 70s? Oh, yeah, standing start for the Mexico City race. That would be something. That would be. Any news regarding the Mexico race weekend? Nothing new I've heard, Andrew. Good question. I am intrigued by the reports. And again, I don't know if they're rumors or whatever, but reports about possibly going back to Montreal in the near future. That's one I've been hoping would get another date. Again, I think, the track promoters, if they wanted to hold a monster truck rally halfway through the race, I mean, I'd be on board with that. Such a beautiful track. I've never been to that particular region in Canada, but I'd love to cover a race up there. It just looks like a gorgeous track. It would be a bit of a logistical challenge to cover all the action there, especially from the garage area, but it would be interesting. It would be interesting. And pretty much all the Xfinity races that were ever held there are instant classics, one way or the other. I think we've talked about that a lot on the show here, but yeah. What track had back-to-back races without a caution in the 70s is the question. We got guesses for Charlotte and Old Dominion Speedway, and Ontario, and Michigan, and Wilkesboro, and Charlotte, and Talladega. See, no, it's up in the air. Southside Speedway. Several good guesses. Yeah, Montreal is beautiful. It looks nice. The St. Lawrence River and all that. That'd be very interesting to check out. What track had back-to-back races without a caution in the 70s? We're going to have the answer coming right up here in just a moment. All righty. Wilkesboro is another good guess. We will find out. All right, here we go. What track had back-to-back races without a caution in the 70s? And the answer is Michigan. Michigan. Yeah, I was thinking Bristol too. Those of you guessed Bristol, I was kind of on the same path because I know there were some Bristol races there. But the answer is looking for is Michigan is the correct one there. And Robbie Burns, looks like you were the first one on that one. So there you go. Martin Henderson as well. Charles Peterson Jr. Air Base Speedway. Oh, no, not quite. There you go. Yeah, be a fantastic battle to have there at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it there at the moment. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show here this evening. So, my goodness, we got, again, first-time winner with Josh Berry at Las Vegas. Now looking forward to him running the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro later this year, and all the benefits that come with it. Yes, the playoffs too, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there as well. Yeah, fantastic week of racing. Really, really enjoyed this one. So this was good. Now, hopefully we have even more coming up here next week for Homestead Miami Speedway. Yes, so quick of a turnaround. We had Homestead as one of the last races last year in the round of 8, where Tyler Reddick put his stamp on the championship 4 with that dramatic last turn battle against Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney. Will we see those 3 drivers contend for the win here? Will Christopher Bell return to victory lane here again? Or is it going to be Kyle Larson or William Byron returning to victory lane? It could be any number of stories, or perhaps even another first-time winner, perhaps emboldened by these last couple of races. We'll find out. I think it's going to be really exciting. So what we'll do here is our next show is going to be next Sunday after the Cup Series race. We'll talk about trucks and Xfinity as well as the Cup Series action there. And in the meantime, my Twitter feed is at LastCarOnBrock. My Patreon is patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. And of course, you can check out the videos on this channel. The Cartoon Network Wacky Racing video still in the works. Hope to have some more updates on that. If you are in the Patreon, I've posted some screenshots of kind of the progress so far, so you can get an idea of where I am in that project. And very excited to show that with everyone. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and I'll see you all next week.